Republican presidential candidate and McDonald's employee cosplayer and garbage collector cosplayer. Damn, he's really been expanding his range lately, hasn't he? Donald Trump is suing CBS News over what he alleges is deceptive editing of an interview aired on 60 Minutes last month. Wait a second. Trump didn't do 60 Minutes last month. Here's the story from, appropriately enough, CBS News, dated October 31st, 2024. Headline, Trump sues CBS News over 60 Minutes interview with Harris. Network says suit is completely without merit. Quoting from the story, the lawsuit, which comes just days before the two candidates face off in the 2024 presidential election, centers on two clips of an October interview 60 Minutes conducted with Harris. That would be Kamala Harris, Vice President of the United States and Democratic Party presidential nominee. One of the clips was edited to include a longer section of her response to a question about the conflict in the Middle East. Trump's lawsuit contends this editing decision was meant to intentionally assist his opponent and mislead the public, something CBS News has disputed. To paper over Kamala's word salad weakness, CBS used its national platform on 60 Minutes to cross the line from the exercise of judgment in reporting to deceitful, deceptive manipulation of news, the lawsuit claims. The suit says the former president seeks a jury trial and at least $10 billion in damages. Former President Trump's repeated claims against 60 Minutes are false, the network statement says. The interview was not doctored. So, Trump is suing CBS News for $10 billion over the way an interview with Kamala Harris was edited. And what actually happened? Like, what's the completely normal thing CBS News did in the editing of the interview that Trump is pretending is outrageous and unprecedented so he can have a problem with it? Quoting once again from CBS News, in an earlier statement released by 60 Minutes, the network explained the two clips were edited differently because one segment, which appeared on Face the Nation, afforded more time to accommodate a longer section of Harris's answer. Same question, same answer, but a different portion of the response. The October 20 statement from 60 Minutes said, when we edit any interview, whether a politician, an athlete, or movie star, we strive to be clear, accurate, and on point. The portion of her answer on 60 Minutes was more succinct, which allows time for other subjects in a wide-ranging 21-minute-long segment. Trump has filed this lawsuit in Texas, and there doesn't seem to be any legitimate reason for this. The interview was not conducted in Texas. CBS News is not headquartered in Texas. As far as I know, 60 Minutes records its in-studio segments with the correspondents in New York City, so there's no reason for this lawsuit to be filed in a court in Texas. My first assumption was that Trump is judge shopping, and he filed the case in Texas because he expected the case would be assigned to a sympathetic judge, and that does appear to be what has happened. The judge assigned to this case is someone Trump appointed to the bench in 2019. But the CBS News article about Trump suing, well, them, includes this crucial detail that further explains this particular choice of venue. The lawsuit does not claim Trump was defamed by the network, said Jeffrey R. Stone, a First Amendment scholar and law professor at the University of Chicago who reviewed the complaint. Instead, the suit attempts a novel use of a Texas statute that is meant to prevent advertisers from misleading the public about a product being sold. The Texas Deceptive Trade Practices Consumer Protection Act. Stone called it a misapplication of the law. You think? That statute is about sales. A salesperson can be held liable for stating that a product has certain positive effects when he knows it doesn't, Stone said. But CBS News is not engaged in advertising here. But from Trump's point of view, isn't that the problem? He wants CBS News to be engaged in advertising for him. The only time he isn't pissing and moaning about journalists, it's when they're saying positive things about him. Everything else is fake news. Every reporter who says unflattering things about him, which usually consists of just reporting the truth about things Trump has said and done, is unfair or nasty or mean. If Trump had sat for a 60 Minutes interview, as he was invited to do, and he chickened out, let's not forget that, but if he had been interviewed by 60 Minutes and they had actually done for him what he is falsely accusing them of doing for Kamala Harris, editing the interview to make one of his word salad answers sound better, does anyone think he'd be complaining about it? Much less filing frivolous lawsuits over it? More to the point, does anyone think Kamala Harris would be suing over it if that had happened, if 60 Minutes had done something like that to the benefit of Trump? She'd probably complain, and rightfully so, if a major respected mainstream news outlet like 60 Minutes had edited an interview with Trump in a way that was misleading to Trump's benefit. I assume that Harris would complain. She'd have every right to complain, but would she sue over it? I don't think she would. Why not? Because she wouldn't have anything to sue over. What, they edited an interview with her opponent to make his answer look better than it was? I mean, that sucks. That's gross journalistic misconduct, but is there a lawsuit there? I don't think so. Certainly not from Kamala Harris in that hypothetical situation, just as there's absolutely no standing for Donald Trump to sue in this real-life situation. So even if CBS News had done the thing Trump is accusing them of doing, which they absolutely did not, Trump still wouldn't have a legitimate reason to sue them. But he's never had a legitimate reason to do anything he's ever done, and it hasn't stopped him before. Here's what I find interesting about all this. This is yet another example of how conspiracy theorist thinking defines Trump's political campaign, and I think his overall worldview. When conspiracy theorists talk about the shadowy, secret powers that are supposedly responsible for all the hoaxes and psyops and frauds that conspiracy theorists are constantly saying have happened and are happening, all of these super powerful people who are pulling the wool over the public's eyes and pulling the strings on world events from behind the scenes. Conspiracy theorists describe these people in such a way that for what the conspiracy theorists are saying to be true, their enemies have to be simultaneously omnipotent and incompetent. For example, take the conspiracy theories about the Apollo moon landings, that the Apollo moon landings were faked and nobody ever actually landed on the moon. If you want to believe that, you have to believe that the people responsible for that massive hoax were powerful enough and clever enough to pull it off without anyone outside their conspiracy discovering the truth, but also that they were sloppy enough to leave behind really obvious evidence of their hoax, that these conspiracy theorists could then come along a few years later and discover and realize the shocking truth. When Trump talks about the mainstream media, the exact same logic applies. Every organization that displeases him is always described as collapsing, as declining, as pathetic. He talks about the failing New York Times, talks about CNN and MSNBC having terrible ratings. Nobody's watching. Nobody trusts them. In a Truth Social post from October 9th, where he whined about the Kamala Harris 60 Minutes interview, Trump described 60 Minutes as a once storied brand. implying that they've come down in the world, probably because nobody's watching anymore, due to how unfair the show is to the definitely very popular and adored Donald Trump. But at the same time as all of these news outlets, like 60 Minutes, are failing and irrelevant and incapable of drawing an audience, they're also apparently so powerful and influential that supposedly putting a flattering edit on an interview with a presidential candidate counts as a form of election interference. So, which is it? Losers who have lost the faith of the public? Or all-powerful kingmakers who have the ability to tip the balance of a presidential election as they please? It can't be both, or at least for a reasonable person, it can't be both. But for Donald Trump, it's both, because he's not interested in the truth. To him, truth is just a name for his website. It's a brand, like his own name. It holds no meaning for him other than as something he can profit from. What's the truth? The truth is the thing that makes him money. The truth is the thing that helps him win. That's the truth, according to Donald Trump. But guess what? This Tuesday, November 5th, just a few days away, we have a chance. We eligible voters here in the United States of goddamn America, we have a chance to force Donald Trump to face the most uncomfortable truth of all when we elect Kamala Harris to be the next president of the United States. If you have not already done so, please, I urge you to get out there on Election Day, vote, and vote for Kamala Harris for president, because it is time to make a loser out of Donald Trump. Again. He might not accept it. He didn't last time. He still hasn't. But that's okay. The nice thing about reality, it's real, whether Donald Trump likes it or not.